Yep.
I'm throwing 3 sound cuts into the Dropbox. I'm going to update this show sheet here to kind of go through what I think he wants. Although he hasn't put anything in the Dropbox yet, so who knows. Yes. Show sheet should be updated. What did you say, Will? Show sheet should be updated.
It's time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Bill Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Back live with you tonight here in our studios in Columbia as well as in Dallas, covering the Clemson Tigers in the Cotton Bowl. We were also in Charlotte this morning with the Gamecocks as they went through practice preparing for the Belk Bowl. Got it all covered for you here on Sports Talk tonight. Hope you had a great holiday yesterday and looking forward to a great few days leading up to the bowl games on Saturday. And, of course, New Year's early next week. Phil Kornbluth, the Professor Tom Hayes, and Brian Leonard here in Columbia. Will Pelagic is in Dallas with the Tigers as they had more practices today between the Tigers and the Irish, and a major media session in Charlotte this morning USC went through about a 2-hour practice at Charlotte Latin High School, and no major news to come out of it. I think one note is that Hank Manos was running first-team center, it appeared, for most, if not all, of the practice. The practice was left open for its entirety, so that was kind of neat, something you don't normally get in college football anymore. So we were able to watch everything. And the Gamecocks were in full pads, as Will Muschamp said he was going to put his team through a rigorous workout today, and he did. They were in full pads with, some contact, but no tackling to the ground or anything like that. The only two players who were in yellow who have not been declared out were Kier Thomas, who was running around and walking a little gingerly, dealing with his injury, and the freshman linebacker, Rosendo Lewis. Yes, he too was yellow today. So those are the only two Gamecocks in yellow who could perhaps get healthy and play on Saturday. Of course, we are discounting those who have been counted out. So otherwise, no other major news to come out of the Gamecocks practice session today. And we'll hear from the Gamecocks' Jacob August today, as several players came over to talk with us after practice. Let's head out to Dallas and get the latest on Clemson and Notre Dame as they continue their preparations for the Cotton Bowl. And, of course, the big news is everybody's waiting on the result of the B sample for those Clemson football players who have been suspended by the NCAA. And Will Palach is in Dallas, and he's been, watching a lot of urine samples go in front of him over the past 24 hours. Will, how are you?
Good evening and greetings, Corn. No urine to speak of, at least here, but from the standpoint of where Clemson sits right now, they're still in a holding pattern with regards to what's going on with the suspended players. Of course, Dexter Lawrence, Zach Gaiella, and Braden Galloway. This is a situation that still remains, pardon the pun, fluid. The Clemson Tigers, of course, still waiting whether or not they'll be able to play. But from the standpoint of where they sit, they are working on the assumption that they are not going to play this weekend. That's the way that they've been treated in practice. That's the way that they're being treated basically the rest of the week. We asked Brent Venables earlier today whether or not Dexter Lawrence is basically going through practice, and basically he said that the three players who are suspended are permitted to be with the team, but they are not going through any kind of reps. So it would probably be impossible at this point to suggest that any those three will be on the field on Saturday, again, pending the results of the B sample. We just got a notification from the Clemson media sources there that have basically told us there's really no news on that front, and they should not know at least until maybe end of day Thursday about the status of those players. And it was our first chance today to get at least a pulse of the players and a pulse of the assistant coaches just about how much of a gut punch it was to the system of the Tigers, who, as you guys know, this is about as well-oiled a machine as there is in college football. And this certainly rattled the cages a little bit, but it seems like a lot of people, at least the ones we talked to today, are moving on, moving up, and moving over. And they seem very confident about the ability of both Albert Huggins and Niles Pinckney, and to a lesser extent Jordan Williams, about their ability to at least fill the void that Dexter Lawrence is vacating. And it's a big one, not just in stature, but also in production. I don't know how much of an impact it has on the game, Pro, but from where I sit right now, just from a psychological standpoint, I wonder where the Clemson head is at this point collectively.
Well, it depends on how you deal with it. I think this could fuel this team if they needed any more emphasis of it. But I'm like you. I think there's not a guy who's going to fill those shoes, but they've got two guys who are very serviceable at defensive tackle. And of course, they got those great ends still there, and pretty much a solid defense. If I'm Clemson, I'm worried more about the greater improvement corner of the secondary in this case, as far as Clemson is concerned. But, if I'm NCAA, these guys are trying to play for a national championship. And I understand you may think there's some malfeasance going on, but at least give them a word whether they're going to play or not so they can prepare properly.
Well, sure. I mean, they've given the word. No. I mean, they've already suspended him. They've gotten the word. No, you can't play. Now, they've got the B sample, and I think historically the B sample usually supports what the A sample says.
It usually does. And
victory there for the tested. Then you have the opportunity to appeal, but with the holidays and getting people together to listen to an appeal might be impossible. So if the B sample doesn't save them, then you have to figure that there's no saving them for this particular game. And look, this is an interesting deal here, you know. And Will, I don't know what kind of chatter you've been hearing from various people out in Dallas, but when this thing broke on Christmas Eve, and we talked about it on the show, or I talked about it on the show on that night. I mean, you have a situation here where, according to the World Anti-Doping Association, this is a steroid that is not been approved. I mean, it's something in the development stages to be used for health reasons, but not yet, has not been approved in the United States or any other country. And according to their definition of the drug, it's only available through the black market. Now, Dabo Swinney was, once he was asked a question about it, you know, he didn't voluntarily step up to the mic and say, hey, before we get started, let me tell you, he only answered a question from a reporter who said anybody academically ineligible, anybody injured, anybody left behind. And then he stepped up and said, oh, well, by the way, we've got 3 guys suspended by the NCAA. And then he quickly said, you know, it's a small amount. It's a very slim amount. You could get it through hair from shampoo or creams, whatever the case may be. So he was quickly trying to get out in front and define this thing from a Clemson standpoint. But the question still remains, is that all it is, or is this a deeper issue at Clemson?
Yeah, I've tried to look into this as much as possible and talking to basically everybody that I can. And to a man, the message is unified. They still do not know how this substance made it into these players' urine. The only thing that I guess comes to mind for me, just something that connects all 3 guys, because they're all different classes, all different positions. And quite honestly, from everything I've at least come to know, is that they're not necessarily guys who hang out or live together, but they've all had significant foot injuries over the course of the last couple of years. You know, Galloway, obviously, in the offseason, Gaiella at one point in his career, and of course, we remember the foot injury to Lawrence last year that kept him hampered for much of the second half of last year. That's the only real common denominator between those 3, other than the tiger paw that they wear on their helmets and the orange breeches that they wear on their pants. But from the standpoint of where they sit, I still can't figure out just exactly what this is. And this is such a very unique situation, guys, because normally with these situations, you know, they'll take the stance of, oh, well, you know, players not being a good teammate, this and that here and there. Clemson has taken the approach that this was something that was either done to them or done unintentionally. There was no wrongdoing, at least that they're claiming, which, again, it speaks to me in the fact that maybe it's something in the training table, maybe it's something of a training remedy that they tried to use, that the ingredient was not disclosed. But this is about as peculiar a situation as I've seen involving player suspension and that. And from the standpoint of where Clemson sits, again, they feel like there's some wrongdoing being done to them as opposed to by them from that situation.
Yeah. Well, as I said the other night, you give them the benefit of the doubt for sure, but not to the point where you have your head buried in the sand and you think that, gee, you know, nothing like this could happen at Clemson. I mean, this thing sort of happens on one hand, and then you find out later that it's a bigger issue, a deeper inside a program. Not necessarily saying that's the case here, but it's just not something you can just slough off until we hear more from the investigation and more from the NCAA. Okay, we'll be back in just a moment.
Hey.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Pick up the phone. No. Put me on Comrex. Yep. I didn't connect via the hotspot. I'm connected via their independent wireless. How does it sound? No. Hold on. Sounds double. What does that mean? Is that better? Go ahead. Go ahead. Do you want me to bring it back and go to Venables?
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
Okay, we're back at Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Phil Kornblut, Professor Tom Hayes here in Columbia, Will Pelagic in Dallas covering Clemson. I'll be back in Charlotte tomorrow for the Gamecocks' second practice there, then a press conference on Friday, and then the game on Saturday. We'll have it all covered for you here, and Will be with the Tigers through the rest of the week until they play on Saturday. Be sure to catch everything that we have for you from the respective bowl sites on our Twitter at SportsTalkSC. And on our website, sportstalksc.com. I was out there this morning about an hour before South Carolina arrived at Charlotte Latin High School, and they practiced on that field. We were there when they got off the bus, gave you a live periscope of the Gamecocks walking off the bus into the locker room area, and then some video of the actual practice session. They let us video some of the activities in the first three periods of practice, and then we had to shut it down, but we could stay in there and watch them the rest of the way. And the Gamecocks, after practice, today was kind of a fun day for them and Virginia. Both teams, after their practices, went out to Charlotte Motor Speedway and got a chance to ride in a NASCAR car at speed around the speedway. So I'm sure they had a big time with that. All gas, no brakes. Perfect for the mindset of Will Muschamp out there at Charlotte Motor Speedway. One note that was tweeted out here this afternoon by Mike Gillespie of WOLO TV here in Columbia, better known as Wolo. Tight end Kyle Markway has been granted a 6-year of eligibility after appealing to the NCAA. He missed most of 16 and 17 with the same injuries. So he returns to South Carolina. They'll have a bushel full of tight ends next year. With Markway returning, Evan Henson will be back. You've got a couple of freshman tight ends coming in. Pollard will be back to play some tight end or split out into a kind of a combo type receiver. Yeah, they can use him a couple of different ways, so no shortage there when it comes to that position. So that is the word from South Carolina today, and we'll hear from the Gamecocks' Jacob August, another tight end who is not returning. He will be graduating and moving on with his professional career in terms of don't know if he has NFL aspirations or professional football aspirations, but certainly on into the business world if that doesn't work out. As for the Tigers, Will, besides practice today, it was a media session day. You guys got a chance to talk to practically everybody on both the Tigers and the Irish side of things.
We did, Corn, and we don't get the full team experience until tomorrow. We're still wondering whether or not we're going to get access to Dexter Lawrence, Zach Ayala, and Braden Galloway, the 3 suspended Clemson players. Still awaiting word that from not only the folks at the Cotton Bowl, but also folks from the Clemson Media Services and Strategic Communications staff. But the one person who I guess was most sought out after basically all the events that have transpired over the last couple of days was Clemson defensive coordinator Brent Venables, who now has the unenviable task of trying to replace somebody who holds a very big spot in Clemson's interior defense in defensive tackle Dexter Lawrence. Here are his first comments about the absence of Lawrence earlier today.
Well, you hate it for Dexter. You care. It's like one of your own children, so you hurt for him. But treating it like an injury, let the process, work for itself, and prepare like we've been preparing for a couple of weeks. Go win a ball game. That's where your focus is, and get your arms around them and kind of move on.
For any expectation at all, Brent, there's even a 1% chance he can play Saturday?
I've like spent zero time thinking about it. I don't live like that, so I don't know percentage. I don't know. I'm not involved in any part of the process whatsoever.
Devastated.
Well, I mean, you'll have to ask, him, but I mean, I think we do as good a job as anybody under the circumstances at loving our guys and lifting their spirit. Coach Sweeney is just amazing, and to find a way to bring out the best in people. So that's what he's done with Dexter, and Dexter's, trying to keep him as involved as we can. So he's a huge reason why we're sitting here today and why we played, great defense the last, 3 years.
So is he going through reps? I mean, you're saying you have to treat it like an injury, but I mean, how does it work in practice?
Yeah, he's not repping.
How much confidence do you have in the guys behind him, Albert, some of those guys that have played a lot of football, if he doesn't play, if Dexter doesn't go?
So say, how much
and Albert and some of those guys that will have to step up if Dexter can't go. Just how much confidence do you have?
I have a lot of confidence. I've seen enough, on tape, and then, tough situations those guys have been involved in. Albert and Niles and Jordan Williams, until he got injured early in the year, was really coming on, and he's had a nice couple of weeks, and some spot play here the last half of the season. He's done well. So we got 11 guys. We really get 22 guys on both sides of the ball in our special teams, and if we are who we think we are, you're going to be able to overcome. Injuries are part of the game, and that's what we're treating this like. So some critical situations a year ago, whether it was Florida State to win the division, some other games when Dexter was very, very limited, Albert played really well, and he's better now than he was then. So, this is just an opportunity for Albert, Niles, and Jordan to have an opportunity to contribute. And I think we'll be just fine.
What's been your biggest focal point in terms of vulnerability standpoint, thing that you have to fix that didn't work throughout the season?
Oh, man. I'm still working on depth. We haven't any time to develop any more depth across the board. No. Hey, look, we're 13-0. We've played pretty well for most of the year. Like any team, you have your good moments and bad moments. And South Carolina game we did not play well in. And the second half of the A&M game they made some plays and we didn't. But We've been able to play pretty well all year, and we're going to need to play well back end, at linebacker, up front. We're going to need to be very, cohesive. And again, that's to me, that's what's most important is how we play, in this game, cohesively, as a entire 11.
I don't mean to belabor this part of the point, guys, and no one's no one's playing the small violin for Clemson here today, but I can't help but think that this whole scenario casts a bit of a pall or puts a bit of a sour taste on at least the pre-bowl experience. Once the game starts, it's gravy. It's just like a football game, but at least this particular point where they want this to be an experience for the young men, I think that this has just kind of created something like Pro said, almost unneeded when it comes to at least all the ambiguity which sits with whether these guys will play or not.
Well, you're right. I mean, you don't want to have something like this, a cloud like this, hanging over you, because you know what happens. This kind of thing crops up, and people begin to make allegations, and they begin to wonder about what's happening inside your program. And there may be nothing more to it than just these three guys, but it does raise questions and it does raise suspicions, as the case would be with any program in the country that has players suspended for failing NCAA drug tests. It's just the natural reaction. So until we get a clear and absolute answer, and from what I understand, and from what the players were telling you and others today in the media, Clemson is thoroughly investigating within its own operation how these three guys ended up having this steroid in their system, regardless of the amount that's in their system. They had it in there, and they're going to apparently leave no stone unturned to try and find out the cause of this.
It is, again, no stone unturned, but again, you wonder, again, part of this, I almost blame Clemson in the standpoint of the fact that, you know what's going in your body. And if this did come from the trading table, that, if I'm a Clemson fan, somebody's head has to roll on that, just because if you're thinking that this is an energy drink or a hair cream or an acne thing, that's one thing or another. But if this is something that was ingested by these guys knowingly, thinking that they were getting it from a good source, then I'm wondering, okay, what has to happen to make sure this doesn't happen again?
There's one thing you said earlier, though, that caught my attention, and that is that all three dealt with foot injuries, and all three turned up positive for a steroid that addresses muscle and muscle growth and muscle repair sort of thing. So to me, that sort of throws up a bit of a red flag. All right, we'll continue with more in just a moment.
take you back here from the Cotton Bowl Classic in Dallas at the Omni Hotel, the media headquarters. One of the team hotels actually, too. This is where Notre Dame's staying. The Clemson Tigers are staying nearby at the Hilton Anatole, which is about a hop, skip, and a jump, about 10 minutes from here in downtown Dallas. It's funny, Corn. I think we witnessed a bowl first today here in the city of Dallas. The First Responders Bowl, which is played at the original Cotton Bowl Stadium in Fair Park, which is about 3.5 miles east of here, suffered a cancellation, if you will. They called the game a no contest in the middle of the first quarter between Boston College and Boise State because of severe weather that rolled through the area. And we were just getting out of the media event earlier today when that weather was rolling through. And so we could hear the thundering storm and all that come through us, but I didn't think it was enough to cancel the football game. Just a weird situation and an unfortunate situation for the fans who made the trip down here from not only Boise but also from Boston. But, further proof that, maybe we are playing too many of these bowls because Mother Nature has now wreaked her ugly head about that.
And more are coming. Don't forget, we've got the bowl game in Myrtle Beach in 2020, I believe that commences. And listen, who noticed that the First Responder Bowl was canceled?
ESPN did.
Yeah, I'm sure they did. They had to do some scrambling.
They were having a rerun. I think Rachel Nichols' NBA show was running in its place, and I think they threw on some E60 from special from earlier the year. It was again, it's all what this is. It's free programming for ESPN that they can throw on in a content period that's not necessarily plentiful for them.
Well, sure. And right now, Minnesota is leading Georgia Tech 13-0. And they're in the second quarter up in Detroit.
No worries about whether they're inside.
Yeah, that's right. They're inside, and you guys will be inside. Now, we're going to have some rain moving into Charlotte, and they're talking about heavy rain moving into Charlotte tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow night. Temperature will be up, like on Friday. It'll be in the 60s. And I think the rain is supposed to move out by the time the game rolls around on Saturday. So that's a good thing. And where you will be, you're indoors in a beautiful arena, and I mean the guys must be in awe of Jerry's World there and just the massiveness of that facility.
Yeah, it's weird talking to a couple of the players today, not just on Clemson's side but Notre Dame. They all walk in and see the massive scoreboards. It's the first thing you notice when you go in there. And the one thing that stadium has, having been there a couple of times, is just that the seats just go on forever. And I wonder if that messes with your depth perception when you're trying to catch a football or even just like a punt or a kick return. And one thing that they do at this bowl a lot more than they do at others is they give you plenty of time inside the game field to at least get yourself acclimated to the surroundings. And the one thing, too, that is unique about this bowl that I don't know if you necessarily have it at any other indoor venue is that Jerry Jones has spared no expense. They have one game field for the Cowboys and one game field for all the collegiate games that they play here, and also one more for the high school games that they play here with all the separate hash marks that they have in the various nominations. But the one thing that they do here is that they make sure that they play on a fresh field, turf field, in order to make sure that there's nothing nefarious that happens as far as the turf goes. So it's the one thing here that this bowl does everything. Every T is crossed, every I is dotted when it comes to making sure that this is the best surface and everything is at least up to Hoyle. According to Hoyle.
Would you happen to know if that huge glass open area they have, are they going to do like they do at Cowboys games and sell standing room only tickets in that area? Do you know that?
I'm not sure off the top of my head. The one thing that they did say is that the capacity they're listing is 71,000, which is a lot less than the actual capacity that building can hold. And I wonder, too, if they're going to have more seats kind of put in, like you said, that standing room only stuff and all that, just because of the demand for being the college football playoff. But they've put 85 in there before, so it's not necessarily something where they're not used to the demand. But I think they are going to try and at least do something to get as many folks in there as possible.
All right, back here in the Carolinas, just across the border in Charlotte, USC was on the practice field this morning for about 2 hours, getting ready for Virginia. Will Muschamp told us upon arrival in Charlotte on Christmas afternoon, he was going to put the guys through a vigorous workout today, and they did. It was a full-blown, well, we don't get to see, the media doesn't get to see regular practices in full, so we can only assume this is what a regular practice looks like. and they went 15 periods. I would imagine in many of their practices there's a lot more contact, but they were in full pads today, and they did a little bit of head knocking, but no taking to the ground or anything like that. But they got in a good amount of work. They'll do the same thing tomorrow, and then they'll have a walkthrough on Friday and play the game on Saturday at noon. And afterwards, they brought over some offensive players to talk to us, and one of those, Jacob August, also known as Dan August from the Steve Spurrier days. And he's a senior, a fifth-year guy who will be heading on from USC after the game on Saturday. And he talked about this being his final game and what it all means to him.
It was a really nice career. It was, I did everything I wanted to. Earning a scholarship, that meant a lot to me with Spurrier and Muschamp. This bowl site is probably the best bowl site we've had since I've been here. Starting in Shreveport 5 years ago to this is like a big upgrade. So that's something to be happy about as a senior class.
And about your family, I mean, it's easy road up here for everybody.
Yeah, not bad. Just about an hour and a half. It was a good trip.
Cardinal Newman to Columbia. I mean, the fact that you really maximized everything you could in your career.
That's right. There's always, nothing's perfect. I'm disappointed in some things, but overall, I'm really happy about where I came from. I'm really proud to come from Cardinal Newman, and hopefully Reedy can do the same.
Did you see anything? Did you see this out of your career when you first left Cardinal Newman that you could be this effective and have this kind of career?
Coming out of Cardinal Newman, I didn't really know what to expect. I kind of just took it one day at a time. Going to Fork Union, that was a pretty good journey. I learned a lot there, and I really didn't know what to expect.
In mindset of you guys here on the practice field today, did you feel like the focus is right, and you're in a situation here with a bowl game that you want to win and you want to get that 8th victory?
Yeah, well, we're just ready to play. We've been sitting on the couch for about 3 weeks, and this guy, you can tell when we go out there and practice, we're just ready to go. We're ready to play. It doesn't matter who it is. So when I was out there, you could definitely tell that everyone was eager to be out there and eager to play on the 29th.
Were you pleased with the sharpness today?
What's that?
With that defense, talk about the defense.
They got a good defense. They're very complicated in what they do. They'll be in a pass coverage one play, and then they're never really redundant about it. That's pretty rare in college. Even pre-snap, we can't really decide what they're going to do, which is a testament to their coaching staff.
They helping on for the last time Saturday. It's going to be at the Bank of America Stadium. I guess a pretty good place to end things, I guess. I mean, just talk about how you think it'll be for you.
It's actually where I started my game too. The first time I ever went in was against North Carolina. So to start my career there and end my career was pretty cool.
All right, there you go, Jacob August of the Gamecocks. Again, the Gamecocks will practice tomorrow. We'll have defensive players coming over to us, and then the head coaches will visit with us on Friday to wrap up the media sessions, and then we'll have the game on Saturday. So, guys, as we look at these games, and by the way, I need to mention that on our lineup tonight, besides Will in Dallas and our folks here in Columbia, Zach Willis will be here as we return to sort of our normal football lineup, but sort of in a condensed way since we missed Monday and Tuesday from the standpoint of having our normal rotation. Zach Willis will be here at the top of the next hour. 1st and 10 with Zach. M&M boys at 7:30 tonight. So we'll be talking more in detail about the 2 bowl games. But I still think, despite the fact that South Carolina is going to be down about 6 or 7 starters, when you think about it. Now, Jalen Dickerson was back in practice today, and I guess he'll have a chance to play some on Saturday. That will help some in the secondary. But you're talking about a Gamecock team that'll be minus its best offensive lineman, its best 2 defensive linemen, and a plethora of players in the secondary. I still think they are a better team and a deeper team than Virginia. Where they've got to be careful, guys, is how they defense a quarterback at Virginia who can beat him with his legs, much like a Kentucky quarterback. And this is an offense that Will Muschamp compared to Kentucky, and we know what Kentucky could do with their quarterback and finding those seams and busting plays with his legs. This is an area where South Carolina's got to be prepared on defense to make sure that doesn't happen. If they can control this guy, then I think they'll have this game under control. All right, break is coming up here on Sports Talk, and we'll have more from Dallas and more from here in Columbia and Charlotte. Cleland Furl, probably the guy you look at now at Clemson as sort of the elder statesman and the spokesman. He had a lot to say today, and Will was there for that. We'll have that coming up.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Continuing our coverage of both the Cotton Bowl in Dallas with the Clemson Tigers and the Belk Bowl in Charlotte with the South Carolina Gamecocks. This is Sports Talk. Will Pelagic here in Dallas. Phil Kornblue, Professor Tom Hayes back in our studios in Columbia. 800-956-7266. We'll take a call as time merits. And also we're going to hear from Cleveland Furl. Reason I picked the two player pieces today, both Furl and Wilkins, they both had different ways of addressing the Dexter Lawrence absence with the players who will be replacing Lawrence, presumably on Saturday. Niles Pinckney, Albert Huggins, and Jordan Williams. And he had a very interesting take on that, which we'll hear in mere moments. Just back on the Gamecocks quickly, Corn, you know, you can put all the motions together during the week. And I think part of what helps the Gamecocks is that they will have a lot of players with something to prove, from the standpoint of a lot of guys who are not starters who are going to get an increased spotlight. But the thing that I still wonder from both of these teams, South Carolina and Virginia, is who has more of the motivation to be there and the want to be there. That is going to determine, I think, in my mind, who wins this game on Saturday at Bank of America Stadium.
Well, if you listen to the Gamecocks, they are focused. They want to be there. You heard Jacob Alkis say that this is the best bowl venue that he's been to in his time at South Carolina. That includes a trip to Tampa. Right. That includes Shreveport. That includes Birmingham. And that includes this trip. And so he likes Charlotte more than all the previous trips that he has been on. I think the Gamecocks are fully focused here. I think that they see 8 wins as looking much nicer on the resume than 7. They see a 2-game winning streak going into next year, coming off the win over Akron. Win a bowl game. You got a 2-game winning streak going into next year. A strong recruiting class signed earlier this month with perhaps more to add in February. Yeah, a win here would be really, really big and would continue to show progress for Will Muschamp in the building of his program.
And I think those players who are going to get more minutes in this football game will wants to really prove to the coaches and leave something desirable in their brains, so when they get to spring practice, maybe they'll get the bulk of the reps when they start off.
Yeah, it all sounds good on Wednesday, guys. I need to see it on Saturday.
We'll see. You know, I just think they're going to come out and play a really good football game and maybe show that offense that they showed against Clemson, against a much inferior team compared to Clemson, a mid-level ACC team against a mid-level SEC team. You would lean towards the SEC team as having the greater depth and the greater overall talent. I think when you look at it, I think South Carolina's got the better quarterback. I think South Carolina has got the better receiver package. I give Virginia some kudos for their defense in the secondary. They're pretty good back there, especially one corner spot. But I think overall, I think South Carolina's got the better football team.
I don't disagree. And that's the standpoint I think that needs to be reiterated, is the fact that I think that pound for pound, Carolina is the better team. It's just a matter of does a motivated Carolina team show up on Saturday? And if they do, I think they win this football game with relative ease.
Well, the key point to being motivated is you got to be motivated for 60 minutes. Last year, remembering this Belk Bowl, Texas A&M was motivated for about 30 minutes and then decided to shut it down. And when they looked at the scoreboard at the end of the game, Wake Forest won the football game.
All right, let's hit the phones quickly, and then Cleveland Furl and a couple of recruiting notes. Jesse in Charleston, welcome in. Happy holidays. Good to have you with us tonight.
Well, I'd like to talk about the Dexter Lawrence situation.
Yes, sir.
Because I think it is a farce that the NCAA puts it out on television, puts a man's health out on television, which is against the law. And something else, you can get it in food, you can get it in hairspray, you can get it in cream, anything. And they've had 42 tests positive, and 39 of them have already been overturned. Now, tell me if this ain't a farce, a scam that the NCAA is doing.
Well, I mean, just to read you what the World Anti-Doping Agency says about Ostarine, it is a substance that is prohibited. It is prohibited around the world. It is not approved for human use or consumption in the U.S. or any other country. The World Anti-Doping organization or agency has reported an increasing number of positive tests involving this particular ingredient and this particular brand of drug. And athletes who use these substances most likely obtain them through black market channels. Now, this isn't the media making this up. This is the official declaration of the agency, which is charged to check these things out and investigate and declare which of these drugs or these agents are
PEDs.
are off limits to athletes. It says here that these particular they're called SARMs, selective androgen receptor modulator. They have less influence on the development and balance of male hormones, including testosterone. They're not approved for human use. They are of interest to the medical community because they might be effective at treating different health conditions without resulting in the negative side effects of steroids. Ostarine is currently being investigated as a way to treat a variety of muscle wasting diseases such as osteoporosis, cancer, and hypogonadism. And it is prohibited at all times. It is prohibited at all times under the S1 anabolic agent category of the WADA prohibited lists. So, I mean, you can argue this, that, and the other. If that's what the substance is, and they've acknowledged that's what it is, it's illegal.
I mean, the thing about this substance, guys, is in layman's terms, it keeps your muscles from feeling pain when you're working out. And it basically increases your ability for your muscles to recover when they've undergone atrophy. So from that standpoint, that is what this drug does. Now, whether they ingested it knowingly or unknowingly, that's the contention that kind of sits right now in ambiguity, because Clemson's alleging this is something that's done by accident. And of course, the test is something that is obviously independent of any kind of feeling. So from that standpoint, regardless if it's in a supplement or if it's in a hair cream or whatever, the fact of the matter is, this is something that's in their system that is going to give them a particular edge.
Well, the thing that bothers me, and I can't get over it right now, and I can't come to terms with it, is this definition of this drug, and that it is not available in this country or any other country, and it's only available through the black market. So if that's the case, if that's the case, how did it end up in somebody's shampoo, somebody's food, somebody's acne cream? How? It's not available in this country. It's not available in any country. It's only how did it end up in one of those substances if it's not available? We need the answer to that.
Yes.
Before we draw any absolute conclusion here.
The party line that Clemson's using is that a lot of times in these energy drinks and supplements and other things, not all the ingredients are disclosed, and that's why there's quote unquote a trace or a sliver of it in their system. But still, like I keep saying, the three players all had significant foot injuries. I'm wondering if it was some sort of rehabilitation method or cream or something they ingested when they were going through that in order to maybe increase their get back from rehab. I mean, I don't know the answer. I mean, we're all basically speculating from that standpoint.
Reading further in this definition, I think you hit on something here. It says here, you should be aware that some dietary supplement manufacturers illegally put SARMs like Ostarine in their products and sell them as legal steroids or research-only chemicals.
Yeah, and that's where you have to catch where this is coming from. Because let's face it, if this 3 has it, then you extrapolate that some other people may be getting it, without their knowledge. So that's why I think Clemson has hired this private investigating service to look into this.
Okay. All right, top of the hour break here on Sports Talk. We didn't get to Cleveland Furl just yet. We will. Also coming up, we're going to have our man Zach Willis here on Sports Talk, 1st and 10 with Zach Willis. We're also counting on the M&M boys to be with us tonight. Fingers crossed, but you never know. And more from Dallas, more on the Gamecocks preparing for Virginia. More Sports Talk coming up after the top of the hour break.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
And we're back. Hour number 2 of Sports Talk on this Wednesday night. Good to have you with us. Phil Kornbluth, Professor Tom Hayes here, along with Brian Leonard. We all had a very Merry Christmas. Well, actually, I worked on Christmas. I think Pro had a Merry Christmas. I think Brian had a Merry Christmas. Will was traveling, but I'm sure he had a Merry Christmas as well. Hope all of you had a Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Looking forward to a great new year. Make sure you stay with us here on Sports Talk through the rest of this year, because we are live every day the rest of this year, including New Year's Day. So, Pro, be sure not to drink too much on New Year's Eve and have a big old hangover to mess you up on New Year's Day.
I hadn't had one of those in a long time. That's how I keep my brain cells.
Maybe I should address that to Will, since he's the younger of the group.
My brain cells are just fine and all intact.
Good,
gentlemen.
Good. All right, let me give you a couple of recruiting items, and then Cleveland Furl Then we'll catch up with our man Zach Willis for First and 10 with Zach Willis tonight. Just a couple of recruiting items here. A couple of guys have come forward with their short list. These are 2020 prospects. Wide receiver Julian Fleming of Catawissa, Pennsylvania, has Clemson in his top 10, along with Alabama, Virginia Tech, Michigan, Georgia, Southern Cal, LSU, Florida, Penn State, Ohio State. And Clemson and USC are in the top 10, with 2020 defensive end Reggie Grimes of Mount Juliet, Tennessee, along with Alabama, Louisville, LSU, Memphis, Ohio State, Purdue, Tennessee, and Vanderbilt. And 2020 receiver Michael Wyman of Greensboro was at USC's practice in Charlotte today. He has the Gamecocks among his favorites at this point. Saw him standing on the sideline watching the Gamecocks. That's the reason the Gamecocks didn't close practice, because they had a couple of recruits on the sideline. And if they closed practice, the recruits would have had to leave the premises like everybody else. You just can't close practice and have recruits stay in. So they had to leave it open for everybody. So let's hope more recruits show up tomorrow, and we'll be able to stand out there and watch the Gamecocks the whole time. All of the practices for both the Irish and the Tigers have been closed to everybody, Will?
They have been, at least from here on out. They were able to see practice on, I believe, Monday and Tuesday, but anything from today on forward has been closed, which is unique for this level, because last year we were able to watch up to, but not including the day before workout that was the walkthrough in the game field. So a little bit of a different setup here. I'm wondering if it had something to do with the news we found out last week, or earlier this week.
And one of those guys, of course, who could hold court very well with the media across the country is Cleveland Ferrell. And I'm sure everybody wandered over to him when he appeared to get his opinion on what's transpired.
He was a popular guy in the breakout session earlier today, Corn. He was asked not just about the progression of Clemson from the time he's been here, but also the excitement of playing in this bowl. And at the end, I asked him also about what was happening with Dexter Lawrence and how his counterparts will try and fill the void. Here's a little bit of what Cleveland had to say earlier today here in Dallas.
You know, obviously I can't really tell you until we play them for real, but just on tape, you know, as far as just trying to find a weakness, they don't really have one. And that's really tough, because most teams that I played in my career have a weakness that you can be like, okay, like, I feel like we can get something done right here as far as, you know, we have this specific blitz or this specific play, or this player has to win that matchup specifically right there. You know, that's easy game. Like, you got to get there. But as far as them, you know, it really just goes back to, you know, players making plays. You know, at the end of the day, scheme don't win games like this, you know. If it came down to X's and O's, you know, there wouldn't be no need to recruit good players. You know what I mean? So it comes down because the scheme that they run, you know, it's a very good scheme, but I feel like it goes back to their players. They have very, very good players across the board. Anytime you got a good quarterback, good running back, good offensive line, big wide receivers, you know, good tight ends that can catch and block, you know, it's tough to deal with, you know, because that means everybody has to be on their P's and Q's, and everybody has to be in the right spot, and then you got to play well and play physical at that. So we're going to have to play our best game or we'll get beat, for sure.
From your recruiting process now, how has it been seeing Clemson grow into a national?
Oh, man, it's been huge. You know, we were already a national brand before I got here. Just saying, don't you know what I mean? But definitely, you know, as far as just a national championship caliber team, it's been crazy because, you know, my freshman year, the year that I redshirted, I didn't expect us to go to the national championship. You know, as a recruit, coming in, I'm like, okay, we'll compete for an ACC championship. You know, maybe a BCS bowl, who knows? You know what I'm saying? But when I got here, in the locker room, guys was talking about, yeah, we're gonna either win the national championship this year or next year, and I'm just like, hey, like, I don't know who y'all think y'all is, but you know what I'm saying? But when I really got down to the nitty gritty and I saw the type of talent and the type of guys and the type of people that we had, and just the way that we all carried ourselves in this program, and I kind of bought into the culture, man. It was huge, man, just to see. And I love what Coach Sweeney talks about. When he came here, when Coach Sweeney got that job here, you know, he met with the committee who hires the head coach and athletic committee. And they basically say, you know, how are you going to make us like the Michigans, the Notre Dames, the Alabamas of the world? And Coach Sweeney looked at him crazy, like, you know, I want those guys to be like us. I want, you know, I want people to be like the Clemsons of the world. And that, when he told me that, you know, I knew I was at the right place because, you know, we want to be the model program. You know, we do things our way. We have a different culture that I feel like is different than most places around the country. And I feel like we do it the right way. You know what I mean? I feel like it's the best way to to have a player led program, and that's what I feel like we are, and that's the best way to do it. So it's been crazy to see just the type of change that we've had over the past couple of years, and we're not done yet. We haven't peaked yet. And that's the crazy part. I mean, it's great. It's my brother. You know what I mean? Everything's good. Everything's good on this side. Obviously, he was disappointed about what had happened, but nothing he can really do about it. You know what I mean? It's not none of it is his fault or any of the other two players' fault. You know what I mean? So we just got to take it with a grain of salt and move on. I mean, I take a role in it, but I mean, it's not like I got to kick them in the butt just to get ready to play. They've gone through this before. Dex has been. It was last year. Yeah, last year Dex was injured most of the season last year, and obviously Dex was basically playing on one foot, and to see the way that he played that, but sometimes Albert and those other guys had to come in and play as well, and they played great. So it's not really nothing that they're not shocked by getting more reps. You know what I mean? They're really more so excited for the opportunity.
That last sentence by Cleveland Farrell, guys, is honestly the best thing I heard from any player all day. So from that perspective, if you're a Clemson fan, that should turn your frown upside down, if you will.
Yeah. He's a guy that came off of a major knee injury his last year in high school in Virginia. Of course, he had to sit out that first year, and he was very highly touted, very highly recruited coming out of high school, and had to wait his time there just a little while, get over the knee injury, and, of course, he had talent in front of him. But, boy, once he got his chance to step up and play, he has been just big for Clemson, and he's a very good leader out there. And, he is not, at least publicly, stated what he's going to do, and he's even questioned those who believe he will automatically jump to the league. I don't think Clemson's going to be as fortunate this time around by having, Dexter Lawrence come back for another year, Cleveland Farrell come back for another year. I mean, come on, nobody's that lucky to have that kind of talent say no to first-round NFL draft money 2 years in a row, right?
Well, the other thought about Lawrence, at least from the standpoint of him, is that I wonder how much this suspension kind of clouds what his decision making will be, because if he is possibly looking at a year-long NCAA suspension, I think that cinches the decision for him, and it could have a domino effect on the rest of this group, because I think a lot of the reason why this group stayed is because they all decided to stay. I mean, the various grades that they all got were all up and down. They ran the gamut. Some were first-round guys, some were second-round, third-round, and again, we really never got a clear sense of where they all were. But if Dexter's gone, I think that anybody who's on the fence is gone. And, of course, the other part of this, too, is if they win that championship, you have to feel like you've accomplished something, and that's the way you want to go out.
Yeah, this is what's so confusing to me, Pro. I mean, a year-long suspension for what they say is just a sliver, a slice, a minute amount of a substance that they ingested accidentally through something. And the NCAA is going to ban you for a year? Well, I mean, does the NCAA know more than what Clemson is letting on? I mean, it's got to be more to it than that if they're going to slap you with a year suspension.
I think what they're doing is they're playing with semantics here. I think when you give a player who's an upperclassman a 1 year suspension, you're telling him to get the hell out of Dodge, is what you actually are telling him. Because why would you hang around a year suspended, and then they may tell you, oh, you can't play the next year?
Well, this is the point of my question. Back in a moment.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
All right, we're back. Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. Good to have you with us. And let's welcome back for another swing at things here during the football season. It's 1st and 10 with our good friend Zach Willis. Hope you had a great holiday, sir. Thanks for joining us tonight.
It's great to be here, Phil, and I've had a blast.
Hope Santa was good to you and everybody else in your clan.
He was extremely good, probably too good in some cases, but hey, who's counting?
That's right. Well, whoever keeps up with your checkbook is probably counting. So.
Exactly, Sarah.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so I'm just going crazy over this Dexter Lawrence, this Clemson deal over what's true, what's not true. How is this just a small little bump on a log sort of thing, or is this the beginning of something that could grow into something bigger at Clemson? Yeah, I mean, what do you see from where you are? I mean, being a coach and having been involved with NCAA drug testing procedures and things of that nature. I mean, I find it hard to believe that they're going to hand out year-long suspensions for something that is being just called minute, very small, accidentally ingested, whatever, however you want to spin it.
Well, I mean, in full NCAA, you never really know what you're going to get. They play their cards close to the vest. Now, I have not had many dealings with we drug test our athletes constantly. We never had a failure of the PED substance. It was usually some street drug, most of the time marijuana, and you had in-place suspensions for that, which they really don't worry about near as much as they do the performance-enhancing ones, which I always kind of thought was interesting. But basically, you don't know what you're going to get. We don't know because NCAA is comprised mostly of attorneys. And so every legal angle, they're going to cover their side and their liabilities and probably let the media and the fans know as little as possible until they basically hand out the punishment.
Well, this is the last thing you want as a coaching staff and as a team as you're preparing for any game, especially one as big as this one for Clemson. Do you think the Tigers will be distracted? Are they being distracted by this? Can they maintain their focus?
If Clemson has a carrier that I think we all think they do, it'll actually probably pull them tighter together. They'll play for each other. They'll play for their comrades who can't play. I looked up the drug. I would agree this is a very rare, very unorthodox positive test, something I've never seen before. But I'd say they pull together. If I'm going to bet either way, and I'm not a betting guy, I would say these kids are going to pull together and help to unite them. That's what champions do, and these kids are definitely champions.
I know that this is something, Zach, that is you never want to lose a guy who is a first-round draft pick, but how tenable, I guess, in your mind, is this loss for Clemson? The fact that they have guys who are used to playing in his space last year, especially because he was so in and out of the lineup with his foot injury, and you got a fifth-year senior behind there and Albert Huggins, who is more than included in the normal rotation of players.
I think Albert Huggins will take this as a challenge. I can guarantee you, Dabo Swinney is a master motivator, and we all know this. He's inside his head. Remember when they lost, Kelly Bryant left, they were down in that ball game to Syracuse. They could have very well gotten beaten. What did he do? He talked that kid into being a winner. Kid had the ability. Huggins has the ability, and I would bet they get it out of him in this ball game. Clemson's a pretty deep football team, as we know, and I think it's going to pay dividends here in a big way for them.
Yeah, it's Zach, I've always thought about this, especially teams that are used to winning. When you come into a situation like this, if I'm Notre Dame, I'm saying, oh, my goodness, now we got a wounded bear. And the most dangerous thing you can deal with is a wounded bear because it keeps them focused more than – and some of these players, I would tell you that I think are going to be more focused than they would have been if this situation had not come up.
That's the difference in a champion and everybody else. When they get hurt, and I'm going to show how old I am, but you guys remember Muhammad Ali. Will, I don't know if you do. But after he got beat or he got rattled, he came back twice as good in his prime. And he's a great example of what a champion is. We've got tons we could use in this situation. And we'll see what happens. Notre Dame's got a great team. They've got to stop Notre Dame's running game. That's going to really hurt them with Lawrence physically. But from a morale standpoint, this could be a rallying cry that puts them over the top. We just got to wait and see what happens. But I think it's going to be a rallying cry. I really do.
Corn, I've told you about my Muhammad Ali meeting story, have I not?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that you went out to dinner with him, and
young William.
You actually dated one of his daughters, didn't you?
Not true. I did actually see him at dinner though in Washington D.C. So there you go.
And I think it was a moment he's
Pretty
never
cool right
he
there.
never forgot. I think he took that moment to his death.
Absolutely.
Clemson and this quarterback book. Now he's a youngster. He came on after the early part of the season. They made the change, much like Clemson did. He's been really, really good throwing the football, protecting the football. What do you think Brent Venables will dial up for him to try to throw him off his game?
Well, I think you'll see some. Obviously, Brent, as we know, is a big zone blitz guy. His edge pressure are his specialty. But I think, and this is a total prediction, I don't have any knowledge. I think they need to push the middle, push the pocket. This is where Dexter would have helped them a ton. Is collapsing the pocket from the A and B gaps, right up the middle. I think we'll see some linebacker pressure there. Clemson's got a great middle linebacker that can do that. It'll be disguising coverages and just keeping him confused all night long. And then physically, they haven't seen a team like Clemson. There's two teams physically talented at this level, and the other one's Alabama. They've not seen speed like and size like they'll see in this game Saturday afternoon out of the crowd with the paws on their helmets. They hadn't seen a team like this.
All right, let's talk about the Gamecocks in Virginia. I was there today watching the Gamecocks practice in Charlotte, and they seem like they're focused and they're happy to be there, and they want to go out and win a football game on Saturday. That is Muschamp's modus operandi all the time. I mean, the guy had his game face on this morning as he was walking to the practice field. He's treating this like any other big Saturday in the SEC. You foresee any way that South Carolina's not emotionally into this game on Saturday?
I really don't. I think that's probably one of his best traits. And, I kind of whitewashed the game, against Akron. You go back to their last big performance at Clemson, they really came out of the gate and played to their full potential in that ball game, played great. I think they're riding that. Last year, a huge bowl win. They fought it out, came from behind, out-conditioned, out-willed a good Michigan team and beat them. And I don't see why they can't do the exact same thing against Virginia. Virginia's just not as talented as South Carolina, even without Debo, even without Kinlaw. The Kinlaw loss worries me more because Virginia, if they can run the ball, has a chance in this ball game. If South Carolina is able to slow their running game down, I think South Carolina wins this thing no problem, and I'm looking for them to do that.
About a minute or at least 45 seconds, Zach. How much tougher is it to motivate this squad or any squad in that regard when you have bowl games like the college football playoff semifinal and other games like this bowl game that don't quite mean as much in the national landscape?
I mean, with kids, if you know who your squad and Will knows his squad really well at this point, I think he'll do a great job. I don't think there's any problem. I played coached in minor bowls. We had no problem getting our kids ready to play. They've got a bunch of competitors. They've shown that, especially at Death Valley, and I look for them to come out and win this ball game and be fired up doing it.
Yeah, and quickly, how much, because you got a new center coming in there with Stanley moving to guard, how much would they practice that exchange, coming up to the bowl game?
Well, hopefully at least 100 snaps before and after practice with a wet ball, a dry ball, and a damp ball. So everything's done. If that's done with the talent level they had, they should be good to go. But they can overcome one or two bad snaps as long as it's early in the game.
Are you talking to us from one of those caves in Kentucky?
Well, I'm talking from Casa de Ratliff, home of Tommy and Lisa Ratliff in Elkhorn City, Kentucky. So not quite a cave, more like a holler.
Well, you have a great rest of your week, and we will dial you up again on Monday, New Year's Eve, and recap things with you.
Yes, sir. Have a good one, guys.
You too. Thank you very much. More like a holler, not a cave.
A holler, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, he said a holler.
Yeah.
Not a hauler. Okay.
No,
Holler.
Holler. Okay, back in a moment. M&M boys. And we're back, Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network here on a Wednesday night. And we continue to bring back to you our regular football lineup. We just had 1st and 10 with Zach Willis. It is now time to welcome in. I hope they're in a good spirit since it is still the holiday season. The M&M boys. Let's welcome in Will Merritt, former Clemson star offensive lineman out of Wren High School, a former Wren Hurricane. Will, how are you?
I'm doing great, guys. Happy holidays. Hope y'all had a fantastic Christmas.
We did, sir. Thank you so much. And on the other side, former Gamecock star, former New York Giants star, now a star of television, stage, and the big screen. His recent special on the Clemson Cotton Bowl game, co-starring Will Pelagic, led all the overnight rating services in Columbia by a wide margin. He is Corey Miller. Good evening, Pastor of Pain.
Good evening, guys. And that was largely because of Willie Pete. Willie Pete style, Will Pelagic, gracious with his presence and an outstanding job. Got to have him back.
Yes. Yeah,
Thanks,
he's a fine young man. Fine young man. All right, enough of that. Let's get to it. And Pastor, now I saw you today. It was good to see you. I showed you my swim move the other night, the basketball game today. I showed you my bull rush. So I know you were impressed by both of those. But you saw the Gamecocks working out today, Corey. Did you sense a team that is zoned in and serious about trying to win a bowl game?
Yeah, no doubt. They had a good practice, and they were flying around very energetic. And, of course, I'm looking to see several of the young guys get more repetition and more plays. I think really going to help them going forward into next season. That's why these bowl games are important for those guys. I mean, for folks like us on the outside, maybe not so much. But when you think about the 15 extra practices and getting a sniff of some postseason play, I like what I saw. I mean, running backs good, tight ends are going to utilize those guys a lot. Got a lot of veteran players at that position. The offensive line, who maybe the most underrated group this season, continues to improve. And they lose Zach Bailey with an injury. But, the concern is defense. A lot of guys out, no Ken Lowe, no Wanham. The guys up front, when you talk about guys build threat quarterback, with your junior hands that can move around and hurt you down the field with his arm. So you get a little bit concerned, but I do think the way the offense has been playing, they plus 110 from last year, 330 to 440 total offense this year. Pretty impressive, and I think they score some points on this Virginia defense.
All right, well, let's address the elephant in the room. I'll throw you a little softball question here to get things rolling. But the elephant in the room for both of you has to deal with the situation at Clemson and the suspensions of those three players. And we're still, of course, waiting to see if anything's going to change there. So, Will Merritt, your thoughts on what has happened here with Dexter Lawrence and how serious, if serious at all, is this situation with Clemson? Then we'll get Corey's response.
Yeah, well, first of all, from a football standpoint, it's very serious. I mean, Notre Dame knows how to run the football. Okay, so I mean, they've run it all year long. So if you want to talk strictly from what's going to happen between the hashes, this is a big deal for Clemson losing Trevor Lawrence. Okay, Notre Dame has got a fantastic center. They've got good guard play. No, Trevor Lawrence not being in there to draw that double team. So if we want to talk football, I'll say yes, it's very serious. If you want to talk about the fact that I would agree, and I've talked to some of the coaches in Texas since this broke out. Their biggest concern is they just hurt for the young man. I mean, they're upset for him because they see a genuine concern for him with a lack of knowledge, understanding why this happened or how this happened. Now some people might want to take a contrary point to that and say, well, there are rules set in place for a reason. You got to get everything approved, and if it's not approved, then you shouldn't take it. And I agree with all those things. I mean, that's why you have those rules in place. So if the rule is broken and there was a substance taken that should not have been taken, then you have to punish. There's no way around it. But you hurt for a young man that in 3 years at Clemson has done everything right, on and off the field. He's never caused a single bit of problem. He's never had any issue. The teammates love him. You can see it in their voices, hear it in their voices, and see it in their eyes when you talk to them, that they just hate it for him. They hate it that he's had a chance to, his final games at Clemson, he's not going to be able to participate in. And I hope that we get some good news, and that's a very slim chance that that's going to happen. But they have been overturned on this very substance. But at the same time, Phil, if it comes back and the B sample is the same thing as the A sample and it's obviously in his system, and it's a banned substance, it's a banned substance. There's no way around it. You can't sugarcoat it. At the same time, if he took something and he didn't know that it was illegal, he didn't have any knowledge of it, or if it was a faulty sample or something of that nature, you just got to hurt for the young man that has been such a model citizen for this program.
Corey, your response.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much in agreement with Will, but again, when you talk about Ostory, that's a muscle building something similar to steroids is what it is. And it's not something that's pretty much in, energy drink or some of the things, bars that people try to insinuate. It's something that probably was taken for a reason. I mean, 3 guys. So, and as Will said, when you take that stuff, it's banned. It's a national banned substance that you're going to run a risk. And I don't know what their protocol is when it comes to drug testing. A lot of times guys know when they think they might get beat something. But you have to, here's the bottom line. You put yourself at risk, and when you do that, you hurt your team. And right now, this could be a fatal blow for Clemson. Well said. Notre Dame has a phenomenal offensive line with phenomenal backs who can run it. And he's, to me, in my opinion, I know people talk about Christian Wilkins. I think, Dexter Lawrence is their best defensive lineman, in my opinion. And you lose that guy, that's going to be a problem in the center of that defense. So, but at the end of the day, I can almost promise you that it's not going to get overturned. The appeal is going to be too late. So you're talking about a guy's probably going to be lost, and now probably have to go out of age and get ready for the National Football League with this on his report card, so to speak. So I hate it for him, but again, as an athlete, when you put stuff in your body and you know the rules, you have a list of stuff you cannot take. And if there's any type of question, you go ask. That's why you got these strength coaches making $500,000 in their staff. So there's no reason that you can say, well, I didn't know. And so from that standpoint, I put that on the athlete because they know everything. And if they don't know, they can definitely find out the answer to that. And they just put
and I can speak to the fact that, there is no prior knowledge at Clemson. There has not been when I was playing, and there's not now. I do know that for a fact. There's no prior knowledge of knowing when there's going to be a drug test. So you don't know ahead of time about trying to beat things. Let me just address one thing that Corey said. At the end of the day, you do put it on the athlete. You can't put this on a coach. You have to put it on the athlete. If an athlete goes out there and he purchases something from, a distributor or somebody that's not over the counter, it's not GNC, it's not approved on the list, you have to put that on the athlete that they make that decision. Dexter Lawrence he's a grown man and he's got to go. Now, can you excuse the fact that he wanted to get bigger and stronger and maybe he didn't realize that he was taking a banned substance? Sure, you can. You can make that case all day long. But at the end of the day, this is not something you put on the coaches or you put on the doctors, you put on the strength coaches, because they don't know. They don't know what a kid does once he leaves the facility. He can go out there and purchase anything he wants to. So at the end of the day, the blame still has to lie with the athlete on this one.
Yeah, do not disagree. There's got to be, accountability. There's got to be accountability across the board. And I think we just have to wait and see what the NCAA rules here on the B sample, if they give them a break and determine.
This is something that has been overturned, Phil.
Well,
there's been this been overturned multiple times this year with this exact substance.
I mean, it just seems to me from what Dabo said, it was such a minute, small amount that was accidentally ingested by these 3 guys, I guess. I don't understand how the NCAA can hand out such a harsh penalty, basically the death penalty to a player, a year suspension for something this minute, if indeed it was that minute. I mean, we're taking his word for it, and until it's proven otherwise, we'll take him at his word. All right, hang on. We got a break coming up. You guys will just hold with us. We got to get into a little bit more detail about the 2 bowl games. M&M boys are here. Pastor of Payne, Corey Miller, and Will the Thrill Merritt. Back in a moment.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
We're back, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Excuse me, guys, as we take you again from the Omni Hotel in Dallas, the media headquarters here for Notre Dame and Clemson. Of course, we've had reports from Charlotte as well from the Belk Bowl. Between South Carolina and Virginia, we're continuing with the M&M boys, Will Merritt, Corey Miller, here with us for another couple of minutes. Will, I wanted to ask you this just because you'd mentioned you had had some correspondence with the Clemson coaching staff. Just kind of what would be their pulse, at least at this point, when it comes to not only them but the team, and how do you prevent this, bubbling over as kind of a cloud over this whole experience, which is meant to be a positive one for the team, but it seems like it could be very easily be taken out of control by the fact that this news that we got the other day was kind of a downer for them.
Well, I think it is a downer, and I think it's going to be, it's very important for this coaching staff to keep them focused, and I think that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to keep practices lighthearted and fun, and have events for the guys, and they're doing a lot of things that I'm pretty sure most of them were planned, but in addition to that, they're keeping everything loose, just like they have in the last 3 years and when they've gotten to the playoff. Stay loose, stay focused. This is not their first rodeo, okay? They're used to being in this position. They're not used to being in this position, losing a major starter like this. So, yes, it is a factor. But I'll say this. I've spoken to 3 coaches now, I guess, and all 3 have said one of the exact same quotes. He goes, "We're ready. None of this is going to affect us. We know what we have to do to win when we get in these situations." Now, granted, it's a different opponent. You got Notre Dame. You got a quarterback, in Book, who is, 2,500-yard passer. You got Dexter Williams in the backfield. That's a 1,000-yard rusher. I mean, it's eerily similar to Clemson's stats. You talk about a Trevor Lawrence, who is a 2,600-yard passer, and you got ATN, who's a 1,500-yard rusher. I mean, if you look at their wide receivers, it's crazy. Your leading wide receiver is 800-yard catches. Our leading wide receiver, 800 some odd yards catches. And it goes down the list. I mean, they mirror each other. So I think the thing that is different about this game versus other games in the past is usually there's a glaring difference in the two teams. There's a strength and a weakness versus a weakness and a strength, so to speak. I don't necessarily see that with Notre Dame. I think this is a very similar football team as Clemson. They're balanced on offense. They're really good on defense. They're averaging, about 3 sacks a game. They're averaging a forced fumble a game. They're averaging interception a game. Clemson's very similar. They're averaging about 4 sacks a game. I mean, you look across the board, you don't see a lot of difference in these two. So I think the wild card this year, and just talking through some of the things with the coaches, the wild card this year is there's not really anything that either team feels like they could overly exploit about their opponent. And I think they have felt that in years past. They definitely felt it with Ohio State. They definitely felt it with Oklahoma. Going into both of those games, they said there are glaring weaknesses that we are going to exploit in these games. And they did, and they want them going away. I don't think they feel that way about Notre Dame. I feel like they think this is a 4-quarter grinded out, last man have the ball type game. Therefore, you know what? They're probably a little bit more on edge than they have been in years past.
And switching to the Gamecocks, Corey, when you look at a team like South Carolina still building, and you got a lot of young players who will be thrust into some starting positions or get more snaps than they normally get in the football game because of the aforementioned injuries you talked about. The coaching staff's mentality as they're coaching this game, obviously they want to win it, but how much of their mind floats to getting these guys, into some kind of mindset or playing set as they keep on their eye on 2019?
Well, I can tell you this, talking to coaches last night, regardless of the youth and the inexperience, they expect them to go in there and perform at a higher level. I asked the coach today about one, Damani Staley. He was in there with starters today at the inside linebacker. How's he doing? He's like, he's doing much better. He's understanding. He's learning how to play the game. Before it was kind of like too much information. He could process and play at the same time. But now at practice today, they're like he's doing pretty good. And that's the case for a lot of the guys. I mean, right now, they're not freshmen anymore. They're sophomore. This is new season. So they've had a year under their belt. And those coaches expect those guys to play extremely well because they think those guys, the younger guys, have more ability than some of those older guys, and they expect step up and do a great job. So I think you'll see them play well. They'll have fun. They'll just lose, have the music going today at practice. So it's going to be interesting to see how they play against Virginia. I think this is a game they should definitely win, regardless of what the injuries. I think they're a better football team, and I think that's going to show on Saturday at 12 o'clock.
Interesting music selection today as well, because
I saw you dancing on that, Phil.
No, it was kind of a mixture. They had some of my favorite rap going along with this other stuff. So
Were you mad at LeBron James when he quoted those lyrics?
Listen, LeBron, he can say what he wants to say. I saw where the actual rapper, the guy that wrote the song, said it wasn't an insult to my people. It was more praise to my people. So I'm good with it.
Yeah, because y'all successful, man. You got to have the cheese. That's what he was saying.
All money is good, man. No matter how you make it, no matter who makes it, all money is good. All right, real quick before we let
I could disagree with that statement pretty hard. I don't think that all money is good.
Okay, well, the money you've got in your account, it's good. It's good. All right, before I want to get y'all's picks, but before we go, and I'm going to ask you to cross over here, Will. South Carolina apparently is going to be starting Hank Manos at center. We're talking about a true freshman now stepping in the bowl game, and they had to move. They moved Stanley to right guard, Hutcherson back over the left guard. So, what's you being a former offensive lineman? What's the impact of that on an offensive line? Then, Corey, you follow up from a defensive standpoint. How will Virginia try and take advantage of that?
Well, Corey alluded to it a little bit ago. This is not the 2018 season for Will Muschamp, okay? Make no mistake about it. This is not a bowl game he's going into thinking about 2018. He's not worried about records anymore. All he's doing is this is a 2019 season, okay? This is a 2019 football game for him. I think the reason you're going to see freshmen start and freshmen play is because he is using this game, I don't want to say as a scrimmage. That's belittling the bowl game. I would never say that. But I will say this. He's using this as an opportunity to get some guys in there that are going to have to play and play significant snaps next year. So from an offensive line standpoint, you could not have a better opportunity to see what five guys could work as one unit than a live bullet game in like a bowl game. You just can't recreate that in practice. You can't scrimmage that. You can't do it. The only way you can find five guys that work as one unit is to have them in a game together and see how they react to live bullets in a contest. I remember doing it in transition from one year from the Chick-fil-A Bowl to the next year, and it helped. We knew going into the off season, hey, when we go out to do voluntary work and we go out to do 7-on-7s and we go out to do all these type of things, we know where to line up. This is where we came from the bowl game. This is what we practiced. This is what we're going to do. Okay, and you work all summer long as that unit in those positions. So as you go into spring ball, you are starting to refine that unit as five guys working as one. I think it's a brilliant move.
Will, Corey, he took all your time. So real quick, give me your predictions for the two bowl games.
South Carolina went going away. They played the ACC team at 7-5, and that's kind of like 3-9. In the SEC, so South Carolina's the second best team in the ACC. So I expect them to dominate Virginia. Clemson, I don't know. I'm with this Dexter Lawrence situation. I like Notre Dame. I don't think people give them a lot of love. I'm taking the Fighting Irish to play Alabama for the national championship.
Will, your picks?
Well, I'm going with the Gamecocks. I think Corey's making some very asinine comments. I wish I had more time to discuss the stupidity there. But I am going to go with the Gamecocks to beat Virginia, and I'm going with Clemson to beat Notre Dame by a score.
All right. And so national championship, Will, Clemson, Alabama, 10 seconds. Who wins?
Oh, man, you got to give me more than 10 seconds. But I can't pick against this Clemson team right now. I just can't do it. My heart won't let me do it.
Corey, 5 seconds. Clemson, Alabama.
Roll, deep tide.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. We'll talk to you next week if you'll give us the time. Happy New Year. Have a great weekend. Thank you, guys.
Happy holidays, guys. See
you too. Thank you. Thank you, Corey. Thank you, Will. Will Pelagic, final thoughts.
Looking forward to tomorrow's media day and seeing if we get to talk to the suspended Clemson players.
All right. Good luck with that. More from Dallas, more from Charlotte, more from here. We'll see you tomorrow.